Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. I guess we'll start off with some physics. Some, stuff you can't know until you find out. So you're not gonna, somebody else isn't gonna explain it to you, which is just sort of irritating. So I've been playing around with levers. I haven't done my experiment because I have to make room indoors for it. But I did play around outside just with a very simple, the crude, old-fashioned lever. So I actually took a block and put a 2x4 on top of it, just to see principle. See if I can just make this, drop a brick here and see if I can do something to a brick over here. And this design won't work. I mean, it won't work very well. Okay, so you can create a balance, but it doesn't last. I mean, it's any tipping would technically cause it to swing all the way around. So this doesn't work. But all you do to modify it is do this, hang it. It doesn't have to be hanged high. You could put a steel rod through there and just hang it. But anything to reverse it, and it just has to do with this, the fact that when you're above it, you're reversing what it was doing when you're below it. And when you're below it, what happens is basically once it starts to tip, you can sort of understand that the mass on this side gets heavier. It ends up being more mass. So the more it tips, the more mass you get on this side. So it just kind of swings out of control because it's getting heavier, this side of the lever, when you do this. As it turns, this side's getting heavier, and what you want is this side to get lighter, okay, as it tips, and then it's going to return. And so all you do is hang it, and then you reverse that circumstance, and then as it tips it gets lighter, which means the other side gets heavier, and so the opposite side gets heavier, and so it always tries to achieve a balance, and it will oscillate much easier, and it will transfer the energy, obviously the momentum easier, because it's not having to, when it's in this down position, it has to lift that extra weight. So that's the trick. So if you drop something on this side, say I could tilt the board, you have the lever, so this side is down. The problem is when it's down and you have a fulcrum, you have to lift that extra hunk of mass with whatever force you put in, and that's what ruins the capacity of the energy in here to create energy out here, is because you're actually lifting more 2x4. So anyway, it's a useful observation on my part anyway, for me, to finally figure out what the catching point is. And so yes, it's a little more complicated, obviously, to suspend a 2x4 from its top. Anyway, but yes, that's, so I'll have to think on it, see if I can come up with a way of doing that, because it would be nice to have a big lever, just because it makes things so much easier to see, but whatever, we'll see what I get around to. So I guess we'll move on to some comments. Yeah. Alright, back. So there was this comment by None Private. What? I really didn't hit anything. Anyway, I guess I did, but I didn't see me do it. If the premise that particles make up everything, bits, it doesn't matter, they're discrete elements, not some sticky fluid. So that's really the only thing that's being debated here between particle and ether. Ether is some sort of sticky, fluidy jello thing. Okay, it doesn't have discrete elements, individual elements. It has some collection of magically held together stuff. But I don't even know how you make the ether out of non-particles. It's just what? goo. I don't, I can't even make goo out of, I have to use atoms to make goo. But anyway, in the universe, then gravity is made of particles, right? Yeah, fuck you. Okay, and if two objects are moving towards an impact, they are collecting gravitational energy. They're not collecting some special kind of energy. They're collecting energy. They're just collecting bits moving the speed of light. There's little stuff moving the speed of light in the universe, and then there's these bigger things called electrons and protons, and they are hit by the little bits. Okay, energy along the way up to a point of impact, correct? Well, they don't have much gravity, frankly, so no, it's not really correct. Because at close ranges like that, electrons and protons are affected by what's called charge, which, yes, technically is gravity, but it's gravity that's polarized. So you really have to understand that, yes, I have a whole theory I've proposed, and the fact is that for the electron force, for the electron, there's an electron force, a blue force, and then for the proton, there's a proton force, a little red bit. And the two bits behave differently when they hit the wrong colored object, and with that little bit of difference, you create charge. You create attraction and repulsion. The likes repel, the similars attract. The likes repel, and the dissimilar attract. So if the objects are of equal value, 10 ton going 5, 5 ton going 10, so you're saying they have collected a commensurate amount of energy to their mass. Obviously, as the 10 ton falls in gravity, if that's what you're saying, it's collecting more because it has a bigger sail to collect it with. It has more mass to be pushed. The original energy plus an additional gravity energy. We didn't say, this is where these text comments are just so weak. You people really learn how to draw and video the drawing. But anyway, additional gravity energy picked up along the way of both objects will transfer from one object to the other. So he's going to crash them into each other. 5 ton train going 10, 10 ton train going 5, presumably. But he says what other energy they had. I don't know what you're talking about, the other energy. Is the energy a particle? Shit. Yeah, it's in discrete clumps, as Feynman would say. It's clumps of momentum. Like photons, it's made of clumps of momentum. So you collect the clumps, and the clumps are still running, and they're pushing big electrons. So it's like little Sisyphuses are the energy. And most of them are minding their own business, just flying through space, but some of them end up deciding to push an electron. That's where they end up. There's one in their way, and they just keep pushing it until an opposite pusher hits from the opposite direction, and then they both get to be free again. Alright, is gravity energy? Oh, fuck. Energy is energy. Okay, the force bits. Bits of force are energy. They stick to matter, which gives the matter energy. If the matter has little Sisyphuses stuck to it, pushing it, then it now is energetic. How can the objects transfer and contain extra energy? Extra beyond what? An amount. So a single electron, let's say each time somebody shows up to push, so there's an electron and a bit hits it, so now it only has one bit pushing it. It's a big giant electron pushed one person. See, and then you can add more and more. So let's say it was a train. It was actually a train car. One person ain't gonna push it, but 100 people can push it. So that would be the difference. So once you have enough things pushing you, you start going faster and faster. So let's say if you had 15 of these little pushers, you're going half the speed they're going. Right? We could have some number like that. Could be 30, could be 300. Doesn't really matter. You collect a certain amount of pushers, you start going faster and faster. Well, now it's harder and harder for extra pushers to show up to help because you're moving away. You get it? Okay. Well, of course you don't get it. Without expanding, destroying the objects. So how would it... The objects don't fill up, okay? There's no balloon effect. We're talking about something 1,000,000 times smaller than the thing they're pushing could be. It could actually be 1,000,000 times. Could be 1,000,000,000 times. Wouldn't matter if it was 1,000 times smaller. You can get the idea that it's not going to make a significant difference to its size. Okay. If it's a transfer, unless it loops back and comes out again, whatever that could mean, wouldn't that mean that the energy is really in the space between the two objects interacting? And how exactly can it be in between them objects? I mean, how can it be in there? Exactly. How would that help? Fuck. Again, how could a mass contain more than its original volume without expanding? Well, that's not all that hard to imagine anyway. I mean, it's in Einstein's theory, okay, the mass increase. So that's hardly a new idea. But no, it's not really relevant. The mass of the force doesn't have to be the same as the electron, but even if electrons got twice as big, how would that be a significant event? Especially when conventional physics doesn't think they're a size at all. It thinks they're infinitely small. How could it make a difference? Oh, the infinitely small thing is only half an infinity now. Whatever. I mean, what's that? There's just no point. If you're not going to watch the fucking videos, if you're not going to pay any attention to them, what's the point? I mean, there's a simulation video on the debate channel. Okay, it explains the simulation. The simulation essentially explains this, effect, shows its consequence. Shit. Morons. Alright, so website hasn't had much on the crap board, whatever you want to call it. Let's see, how far back do I have to go here? You're already rejecting coming up with preemptive excuses for Michael's experiment. Oh, yeah, that's it. Alright, that's it, I think. LOL, you're already rejecting and coming up with preemptive excuses. Maybe that should be a period, I don't know. Michael's experiment before, you could say excuses for Michael's experiment. I don't need any excuses. I mean, I was preemptively predicting the fact that he was going to cheat. And then I proved it when he cheated all over the place. I mean, look, when you have to explain to a physicist that, you're trying to transfer the energy between two objects, and the physicist comes up with this brilliant idea like, let's put a crumpled piece of foil in between the two objects. Because, then the foil will crumple, and that'll use up all the energy, and this won't get hardly any. Yeah, that's a great idea, isn't it? I'm trying to transfer the energy from this to this. Putting something crumply in between would be a great idea. So let's take a blob of clay and put that in between the two objects. That'll work great. Yeah, when you have to... I mean, when a physicist is this mockable, and you're going to write some comment that's somehow going to persuade me that that isn't exactly what happened. The guy did the experiment, found out the results weren't to his liking. I mean, come on. I mean, how big a liar do you have to be? Clearly, if the results, as he stated, came out, oh yeah, when I did it with hard elastic, it came out exactly like, okay, pretty much like when I used a spring. That's exactly the result his science predicts. That's exactly what he would want it to come out as. And he didn't film it. And he didn't say, there, eureka, we did it. We proved Gary wrong. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he decided to put a blob of clay between the objects. And you're not going to concede that that's fucked up? That I didn't fuck up. He fucked up. I mean, god damn. What scurvy shit you are. Alright. Experiment before you've even seen it. Yes, I was predicting. That's what predicting is you predict before you see it. That's sort of the fun of it. Let's see if I'm right. And I was completely right. Because I knew he can't do the experiment. If he does the experiment, I know what the outcome is going to be, because technically I've done it, in a shit manner. Not good enough for prime time. But to my satisfaction, yeah, I see how it works. There is no bounce back, that's for sure. You don't get reflections if you do it right. It's not an issue. You don't need to glue things together. Okay, none of that happens. Alright, thanks once again for providing insight into your scientific denialist mindset. So it's a denialist mindset to demonstrate, to just show when a physicist is cheating and, bending the truth and twisting and perverting. That's a denialist mindset. And you're some kind of good guy because you defend absolute crap experiment. I mean, it was absolute crap to say, I'm going to, like I said, the whole premise of the lever argument was made clear over and over again in a conversation we had. I said at least 5 times, the whole idea is to get the energy in this into this. And you're trying to find a way to do that, right? You have this 10-ton train over here, and you have the 5-ton train over here, and you want to try to either get this guy's energy into that, or you want to try to get this one's energy into this. And you're not going to do it with a lump of clay. I mean, what a fucking liar you are. Also, speaking of fudging experiments, you're sitting there continually drawing up new experiments. Yeah, it'd be better to find the easiest way to do this. So yeah, the simple one I think is, if I had a pool table and a good camera, of course, would be helpful. But the whole idea, if you just crash one ball into 2 balls separated by a distance, the fact is they're leaving with half the velocity. And the fact is, by your theory, I'll destroy half the energy. So a very simple experiment. Just crash 1 into 2. Right? I mean, I could put them this way, I suppose, but it's harder to imagine the energy getting into them this way. So just put them on a 45-degree angle. And you hit them both at the same time. Only half the velocity's leaving. They're all weigh the same. They're all the same weight. And by your theory, half the energy was lost. Half. You didn't convert it. It magically disappeared into the ether somewhere. That's your wacky, silly theory, where momentum is conserved and everything works just fine. It's pretty decisive proof, in my opinion. It will come out that way. That's what will happen. Okay, so you're, so to speak, fucked, okay, by the facts. And you're the one denialisting, okay? You're the one sitting there in your little denialist tub playing with bathwater. You're playing with bad ideas. Alright, anyway. To prove right, let's see, well, I better read that. Continually drawing up new experiments in an effort to be proven right after all previous experiments prove you wrong. So again, this previous experiment shit is just that shit. The experiments haven't been done by physics. So again, can we go back to the de Châtelet experiment in the 1740s? Did you analyze it? Did you think about it? I mean, I am absolutely correct to point out dropping round surfaces, denting clay with a round surface will not tell you how much energy something has. It's the way to find out, to get the wrong answer. That's the test you do. Because it isn't linear, it isn't fair. The object that penetrates deeper will in fact have an easier time getting through the clay than the object that it hits more shallow. The one with more energy will gain an advantage because it'll take advantage of the round surface, the point, so to speak. You can sort of understand that a round surface is almost like a pointy surface, except with a upside down, in the sense that something that doesn't penetrate very far gets a lot of the flat surface, And something that penetrates further gets a lot more of the sideways surface. So that's easy to understand. You're the denialist again, defending bad physics. I mean, that was just plain bad physics. In 1740, somebody should have stood up and said, wait a minute, that denting clay with round things isn't a great idea, so try a different shape and see what happens. Try just cylinders with a flat bottom. See if you get the same answer, because the fact is you won't. And that's a problem. You have to understand that, see, you do the same experiment with just a subtle difference, and you get very different answers. Well, then you have to rethink what your assumption was. Your assumption was you can detect energy this way. Well, the fact is you really can't. All right. Prove you wrong. So what nonsense, these experiments. And the rest of the experiments are these amateur shit. Oh yeah, let's do the frame rate on a video that doesn't have enough frames in it, that kind of crap. Hey, maybe this experiment will prove me right. The point is you have nothing proving you right. So in 350 years, you haven't managed to prove that it takes 16 times the fuel to go 4 times as fast. Seems like something you should have been able to prove somewhere, that every time I turn the dial on a motor and make it spin faster, that I'm really using up the gas, really sucking it away. You think you could have proven that by now. Anyway, oh wait, no it didn't. I don't know what no it didn't means. I think as soon as the catapult experiment is done well, it'll be pretty decisive. I don't think you can get around it. Half the mass at twice the distance on the catapult is going to go twice as fast. Well, hey, maybe this experiment will prove me right, etc. Blah, blah, blah. That's the job, because you haven't done any science. Then people like me have to, are stuck in the position of saying, well, look, we got to do these experiments because that's the way you figure out the truth, is to do experiments. And it's clearly your side that's afraid to do any experiment that's not inside your experiment box. The ones you can fuck up. The ones that are subtle enough that you can screw them up. And again, the lever one isn't subtle. And so to screw it up, physicist Michael, right, Dr. Michael Coop, had to really fuck it up. I mean, he had to dramatically fuck it up because it wasn't a subtlety. Give it up. This is just beyond sad. No, you're beyond pathetic. The fact that you can't even sign this tripe, just makes you even more pathetic. When you think you're going to convince somebody with that argument, who's going to fall for it? I mean, certainly I'm not going to. Do you think anyone reading this would say, oh yeah, that's such a persuasive argument, he sure proved it there, didn't he? Amazing. I mean, I just can't imagine somebody going to the trouble to type these words when they make no argument. The argument from, I think you're wrong. Yeah, I believe it in my heart. Let's see. Why do scientists accept general relativity? I mean, why do you accept a non-existent nothing doing anything, and then the whole idea of forgetting about three-dimensional reality and saying, well, things can have separate framey dimensions, and everything's in a framey dimension. I mean, just the whole idea that you're pretending that when something happens depends on when I see it. You can't see the flaw in that logic to say that there's things in the universe doing stuff, and it's about what I see, how long it takes a photon to get to me, that decides when it happened in time. That I'm the timekeeper. I'm the timekeeper. I control when things happen. No. I mean, it's just so stupid to say this two events in the universe happen at the same time, and because I'm further away from one than the other, I can pretend they didn't happen at the same time. I mean, somebody should think that's a serious physics argument. It's so stupid. Because it makes highly accurate predictions. Where? Where does it do that, frankly? Sorry, I don't see any of that. So that's more you claiming evidence that doesn't exist. It really doesn't, okay? These are not highly accurate predictions. They're vague predictions. Even the GPS, the math doesn't work out. They adjust it based on it working or not working. They don't do it based on the math because the math doesn't predict highly accurately. All right. Which match reality, says you. And again, what's the reality to match? All I have to do is say, look, if you move a radioactive isotope, it decays slower. That's it. If I push them next to each other, they decay faster. So there's all kinds of ways you can break decay. Okay, decay isn't some magic clock that can't be adjusted, that can't be broken. It's like all the other clocks. It's easy to break. I just put the little atoms closer to each other, and I'll change how often they tick. And you're saying that that's indestructible evidence you have. And again, the simple argument is that's all you're really measuring. Is you're measuring how much the velocity has a correlation to the decay rate. So because there's a correlation between those two things, you think it magically is happening, that time is broken and that you aren't breaking the clock. Even though it's really easy to understand that, velocity would fuck something up. So I can imagine velocity affecting decay rate. Unlike your model, for instance, so mine doesn't have a problem. So, which has new ability to make predictions. What do you want me to predict? So of course it does. Okay. And where you specifically deny experiments, so again, the only experiments I'm denying are ones that have marginal outcomes. I mean, it is a subtlety, and they can be fudged, and that's just a fact. And again, your argument is you're defending the creation of free momentum. And my simple argument is obviously Galileo, Newton, and Descartes couldn't do that. That wouldn't work in their book. And I'm saying there's nothing in the book that's changed since then to make it really possible to create free energy. And momentum is energy. That don't agree with it. So another completely unevidenced argument. So you didn't prove anything, you didn't demonstrate anything, you didn't do anything except talk shit. So, bravo. Let's see, our hand wave. I don't know where this hand wave thing comes from. What is this hand wave thing? What is this? I mean, what is it as a concept exactly, the hand wave thing? Because I hear it used for different ideas. So there's hand wave where you just say, drag, never mind, let's not worry about that. That's hand waving, when you're waving it to push it under a rug. Okay? And that's what I see you clowns doing, right? I ask a simple question. I mean, the Eddington experiment from space is incredibly cheap and fast. And yet it's never even been tried. That's your argument. And that makes sense to you. Then one of the most famous experiments in all of science was never even attempted from space, where there's 400 times better resolution. So you don't think you're just hand waving that piece of evidence away. That, your physics is apparently afraid of the experiment. You apparently is, right? There's got to be some reason why they haven't tried it. Like I said, you just need a moderate telescope, just to, don't need much at all from, say, the space station or the space shuttle. Either one of those could do you could do the experiment right there, right through the window. No big deal. And obviously there's all kinds of satellites that have very good cameras on them. So anyway, hand waving away things like the parallel precession of Mercury. No, I made an argument, okay, that if you could really see, now, I mean, there are actually physics forms. I mean, it's very technical, but there's a physics form where I read through it, and what was argued was exactly what I was saying, which was if you really analyze Einstein's tensors and all this crap, the math that he came up with, that it's really just saying the sun is precessing. The sun's moving. And so as the sun moves, Mercury is affected by a different amount of gravity. But the movement is very small, and so it doesn't reach Venus, because Venus is a really far away compared to Mercury. So the difference between Mercury and all the other planets is Mercury is really close to the sun. So that's why it affects Mercury more than any of the other planets. It's because the little motion in the sun, Mercury feels it. The gravity for Mercury is a lot stronger than the gravity for Venus. So that's not hand waving. That's not sliding it under the rug. That's facing it right up front and saying to you, there's an alternative theory. All right, that isn't all that complicated. Okay, that doesn't require light to be twice as bent by gravity or any of that crap. A simple little explanation that, yes, you can't see the center of the sun, the center of the sun's mass. You can't see its gravitational center, okay? And the fact is, it is spinning, it is doing stuff, and it's not that hard to imagine that, yep, it could be wobbling a little bit. All right, with stuff like, it's the sun. So that's not hand waving. It's a real counter argument, just like I could argue that redshift is being created by atoms, very non-densely packed atoms that physics concedes are already in empty space. Empty space isn't completely empty. And so if you are hitting a little bit of hydrogen now and then, that would provide scatter, and scatter causes a degrade in frequency. So you could imagine traveling, millions of light years or billions of light years, and over that time you'd get enough scatter to redshift any light that you're shining. Perfectly reasonable theory. It's not hand waving. It's an alternative to your wooey crap. That's perfectly reasonable. You never investigated it, you never thought about it, you didn't debunk it in any way. You just ignored all other possibilities because you say Jesus is the Messiah. There couldn't be any other messiahs. There couldn't be any other stories. We have to believe in Jesus. And that's all you're doing. Our gravitational lensing as, this isn't what I said. It's, some weird looking object or something. That's not my argument. My argument is if you look at the lensed objects, you'll see they have lots of defects in them. And what we know is we have the images from supernovas exploding. We have images of that, okay, where there's a bunch of crap that was ejected in the explosion, and we can see the ring left by the crap, the actual physical stuff. And the fact is, it's not perfectly, and the further out it goes, the more it wobbles because it's moving through different fields of gravity and different things it has to pass by. And so it gets tugged and pulled in different amounts, and it gets distorted in its shape. And the fact is, it's just a fact, that every one of your lensing images has those distortions. Every single one of them is broken. They're not complete rings, they're partials, they're in wrong proximity, all kinds of defects that indicate this isn't something being created by gravity. This is something being created by particles, mass, clouds of gas, whatever, okay, moving, and we're seeing the light from that actual pile of crap that was ejected. They're rings of debris, is what it really looks like. So again, wrong. Okay, are claiming the Eddington experiment hasn't been redone even though it has. So that's a big lie. The experiment hasn't been successfully repeated from Earth outside the margin of error, and it certainly hasn't been attempted from space, which is so demonstratively logical that science would do it from space, because there's 400 times an advantage. 400 times advantage. Gigantic seeing advantage. 400 times easier to do. Plus, you don't need an eclipse. Okay, and of course, this isn't even mentioning the other subjects of your denials, like Michelson-Morley. I don't deny Michelson-Morley. I consider it completely irrelevant. You don't even know what a beam splitter is. Okay, you have so little understanding of the physics, and I could point out to you just the obvious, that the two beams aren't even. They aren't the same beam. One of them is transmitted through glass. One of them is reflecting off the glass. Those two particle streams are different. Those two waves are different right from the very beginning. One is going to be constantly spreading, the other one isn't. These are just facts that you're ignorant of, and you're talking shit. I mean, you're just proving that this is a religion for you. It's just a religion. You don't want to hear about the evolution theory. You're just going to keep denying it step by step. Everything brought up, you'll say, well, I could prove to you that Galapagos Islands were produced over time by volcanic activity, and they just keep geologically moving on a plate. All right, and the oldest island has the most animals on it, and the youngest island has the fewest animals on it, and blah, 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 blah. I could explain all of that geology and say, well, God, why would God create an Earth with all these, very long, millions of years of time, at least hundreds of thousands of years of time being obviously built in. And your total misunderstanding of the double slit experiment, so you won't be able to prove how I misunderstand at all, because unlike your physics, I've actually established a predictive tool. I've actually pointed out that you can show me any pattern, and I'll tell you how far the outside surfaces are, and I'll tell you how close the smallest surfaces are. And I won't have to do any complicated anything to do it. With claims that particle alone can produce interference patterns. Well, they're not interference patterns in the first place, and that was already proven by the radar experiment. So if you would just pay attention when they do a radar experiment, you could figure out that there's no possibility that your wacky theory is the truth, because I could take an antenna in the middle, and I could have a source over here and a source over here, and I can create an interference pattern. I can just move this middle one between these two sources, and I can create on and off and on and off and on and off. And how could this interfere with this over here? The two beams never hit each other, asshole. They can't really be interfering with each other, can they, asshole? No, they can't, asshole. It's just proving the fact, okay? This is a religious argument. You're just all religious kooks. Period. Okay, you don't believe in Jesus or Mohammed, but you believe in this crap. Wave particle duality is my God. Yeah, it's like the Holy Ghost. Same difference. Okay. And your total misunderstanding of the double slit experiment with claims that particles alone can produce interference patterns. They're reconstruction patterns. They're phase patterns. In phase, out of phase. In phase, out of phase. Not complicated. Which is a literal impossibility. So he says it's impossible. Now, what experiments did they do to prove that's impossible? They proved that there's no possibility that you could explain this with a particle theory because we know it's impossible. Somehow it's impossible. And it's impossible, why? Because we really can't be bothered imagining it. So it must be impossible if we can't imagine it. And all of this, of course, is stemming from your intuitive desire to want the universe to be simple. So more crap. No, my intuition was that I know the universe gets simpler as you go down. So I know there aren't little, it's not full of hoobies. Okay, there aren't hoobies living on the dust particles. There's not some homunculuses living inside the electrons, steering them with their little steering wheel. All right, the universe doesn't have complex things in a simple elemental function. The chemistry is as it appears, dictated by very strict and limited rules. Okay, that's the way the universe works. The small universe is really dumb. All right. with things banging into other things. Well, it does fit. Okay, it's either push universe or woo universe, because pull, elemental pull, is magic. Oh, come to me. I'm making the sound. Doesn't that mean you'll come shooting? Shouldn't everything just magically jump to my hand? That's your physics, retard. Alright. But I'm sorry, the universe is not subject to limitations of your muck brain. Muck brain. I don't know what that means. But obviously, you're not making an argument. You're just proving you're a religious kook. Mohammed is God, I say so. Okay. Alright, I mean, do you really think you're happier harping on this physics stuff day in and day out? I'm not living to be happy. I know that's fool's gold. Okay, if you're happy, you're either an imbecile or a psychotic motherfucker. And I don't want to be an imbecile or a psychotic motherfucker. So I choose to be, let's just say, less tortured. Okay? I choose to minimize the amount of torture I experience. But that's my only real ambition. Wouldn't it be a big weight off your shoulders to just leave it all behind? So my brain makes observations and I shouldn't pay any attention. So you would have liked that in World War II. That, yeah, why are we bothering worrying about those British fucks and the French fucks and the Jew fucks? Fuck them. Who cares? Not our job. Life is so much easier when you don't care. So you don't care about what's right and what's wrong. You don't care to invest in fighting for the truth. You would just say, fuck the truth. Rape the little truth bastard. Let's just molest the little shit for our fun. Let's, and then we can cook them and eat them too. I mean, it's just so silly an argument. Is this how devoted you would be to things you pretend to care about, right? You only pretend to care. I don't pretend to care about the truth. The truth matters to me. And when I know something's wrong, I'm going to raise my hand at minimum and say it's wrong. All right. I mean, it's not like I have given one of my kidneys to this thing. It's not like somebody said, well, yeah, to win the argument, you have to sacrifice one of your kidneys. Well, I haven't done that. And accept your limitations. What are they? So you have this proven understanding of limitations. So, I'm sure lots of people told Martin Luther King, well, why don't you just go eat a cupcake? Why don't, you're not going to win. It's you're limited. You can't do it. You're just one little man. You can't fix anything. Just let it go. Run away. Because you know destiny. I'm sorry. Fuck you. Alright. That would certainly be the best move here. Well, it would give you time to go chat on somebody else's board about some other nonsense you believe in, right? So, unfortunately, you might make a mess where somebody might actually be impressed by something you type and you might fuck somebody up. So at least you can't fuck me up because you're really dumb. I mean, your arguments are so dumb that there's no fear that you'll make a mess out of anything here. So it's probably safer to have you do your spewing of virus and disease and stupidity here than have you making stupid comments somewhere else. So I'm probably win-win here. Okay. Though it's obvious you'll never accept the reality of the situation. So the reality of the situation is you're right, and it doesn't matter that all the experiments prove you wrong. And all of them do. Let's understand, Leibniz had no experiments and claimed it takes as much work to move 4 pounds 1 foot as it does to move 1 pound 4 feet. Wrong. It's just not the truth. Your own physics knows that now. It's not accurate. So that was a wrong premise that the whole thing was based on. And then the Deschardelet-Clay experiments were a big fraud. I mean, everything she did was a big fraud, frankly. And then using velocity, crashing things, throwing things into sand at higher speeds, and then just measuring who shot a piece of sand the furthest. Obviously, that's pretty stupid as a physics experiment. I mean, they're mockably stupid, as reasoning and logical tests. And so you're just demonstrating the reality of the situation is you can't do a logic and reasoning test. And you're so dishonorable that you'll defend things that aren't true, like they have repeated the Eddington experiment. No, they haven't. Okay, you're just a liar. All right. So anyway, so that's the kind of crap. That's the best they can do. I don't know. Is there an argument somewhere else making an argument about anything? I can't, I don't go searching the little pool of 4 people that, do all their little shit talking and doxing and whatnot. But can somebody produce an argument that I could actually read that would be a decent argument against anything I've said? I mean, I put the things in the 5-minute videos. I show them, 5-minute video. That's all you got to do is argue that. Just find a sentence in there that's fucked up and make your argument, but you can't do it. This is so fucking pathetic. The internet's pathetic. So anyway, I was going through the, I'm looking for more channels. So I went to all the slow motion type channels. They take slow motion video, and they're all just antics. I mean, every single one, let's blow up a water balloon in slow motion. I mean, I don't know why that's so fascinating to people. Filled with paint, because that'll make it even more fun. But yeah, it's all this childish, almost, experiments, filmed with a high-speed camera, and you're just like, oh, fuck. And then lots of bugs. Which is interesting. But the real interesting part is there was a bunch of these channels 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. And most of them just didn't get appreciated. And so I guess the people just quit because they weren't getting anything for their trouble. And that was surprising. I found that, that somehow out of 20 channels or so, there's only like 3 that get all the attention, and all the rest are just left to rot. And the quality of the other ones' videos, some of them are very good. I mean, some of them are amateur, some of them are childish, some of them are nonsense, so they degrade their own channel by doing crap videos. But there's some real quality stuff in all of that. And it's just this, the internet just doesn't work. And it's just very tragic that it really just doesn't work. It doesn't create a mechanism for stuff that is valuable to be appreciated and rewarded. And it's just really tragic that that's the world we live in. But anyway, I have to endeavor to persevere in that world, so I'll learn how to drink cactus water if that's what I have to do. So, till the next time and such, I think that's all there is. It's dismal. A dismal environment for gladiating with facts and logic. There just aren't any contenders. They're all mannequins, or they're shit men. Not straw men, but just absolute shit. And you whack the shit and it sprays all over the place, and it's like, oh fuck, how do you kill a shit monster? It's not a real fight. It's just a shitty fight with shit, literal fucking shit. All right, until the next time, such and so forth and whatnot.